hypertrophy is expansion, as a physical disease.
But you're confusing.
I just read. but think about this beautiful word, pantopico. I wondered what it means. So one of the challenges of understanding him is his vocabulary. It rhymes with panopticon.
But if it's wrong, who can? I mean, okay, sorry.
It rhymes with panopticon. This is actually very interesting. You guys would love this as a thinking about Olson in the world and his epistemology, which I happen to share at a base like 50 years of my life on. Nonetheless, a panopticon, as theorized by Foucault and other sources earlier, is a society of surveillance where every action is monitored by a higher authority. A pantopia is the all-seeing world where everybody can see everyone else at all times. This is the world that Yepes wants to construct, and he knows that Olson wants to construct a similar world too.
No, he doesn't. Sorry, I'm sure.
Here's the end of the last statement. This is Yepes on Olson, just to get the motion of my paper back. It is tragically beautiful to him, beautifully tragic, death by hypertrophy, the surviving fragmentation, its remains on the bottom of the seas. Talk about melancholy a la Hawthorne, romantic and gothic. So I will go back to my theme. It's remarkable to me how little Olson's experiences with Mexico, now I am talking myself, figure into Yepes' development. There are a few citations to either the essay, The Human Universe, or to the Mayan letters. There are useful presentations on the Mayan calendrical system and on mythology concerning Quetzalcoatl, things that Olson did not have an idea of, by the way, while he was in Mexico and writing about the topic. Here is the Olson that I love and Yepes excoriates. Olson's take on language, which is what excited him about the glyphs that he encountered, derives as much from Emerson as it does from Pound. It seems that his understanding of the image, not only as glyph, but as physical fragment of a constructed reality, is similar to that of Miguel Covarrubias and Diego Rivera. The idea is that expression can be built from repeated blocks with a certain formulaic set of properties running through those blocks as designed. Importantly, in this regard, we are not talking about the construction of an abstract, free-floating from hard reality, the hard reality of sweat and unremitting sun. We are talking about physical encounters with the stone. So that's the Mayan letters that I love. Olson is actually sweating as he comes in contact with the glyphs in the baking sun. It's not the free-floating kitsch abstraction that Yepes was talking about. True, the drawings of Hipólito Sanchez serve to raise Olson's level of theoretical excitement. Most of his theory is based on those drawings, not on sweating over those stones when he was digging. But it must be underscored that much that Olson encountered in Mexico generated a physical response. He may suffer insecurities, but he expresses his bodily and psychic reality in a holistic way, one penetrating the other. The bodily and the psychic realities penetrating, one penetrating the other, not as detached layers floating free. Inside and outside always merge for Olson, from the early poem, the Moebius strip, to the Maximus text that begins outer darkness, inner Skodnick. Melancholy aside, surely reading Olson has helped me to improve my conception of the poet. It has practiced me in a kind of productive and highly subjective bricolage, bringing out both the poet and the anthropologist in my processes of observation and synthesis. What follows is a gambit, scattered reflections in search of a momentary coherence. I've got about 2 pages left. How are we doing on time?
Running a little long, but I think we can go a little bit longer than we planned.
I don't think anyone should feel rushed. I think what we'll do is just go to 1:30 and just have a quicker lunch. Right? So from 1:30 to 2 we'll have lunch. So don't feel rushed on it.
Okay. So I mentioned the poem Outer Darkness, Inner Skodnick. Skodnick Point lies to the east of Cranberry Isles. That's the source of my knowledge of Kate Olson and these other people I've been writing about. Skodnick Point lies to the east of the Cranberry Isles. In my essay, My Life Tangent to the Charles Olson Circle, I describe multiple points of contact between my youth on and in the vicinity of Cranberry Island and Olson's last days. The thread that ran through my fragments was a focus on Olson's daughter, Katie, whom I loved as a sister. Here is a footnote to my version of my life. There is an intentional resonance to my life and Lynn Kajinian's my life, by the way. Jack Helliker, who owned the house formerly of Lou Stanley and lived there with Barbara Houghton, once told me, I was probably 13 or 14, that as a small boy, John Masefield had taken Jack on his knee and promised to write him a poem about going down to the sea in ships. Maybe this is a tall story, but it is rather remarkable that Masefield and Olson died about the same time, that is, within 3 years of one another, the same 3 years of my Vietnam War era experience, military experience. Talking about a period of historical challenges to American global dominance, the impulse to bring up Hawthorne, with which I began, has relevance because Hawthorne sets the scene of the poet as a troubled observer. But Olson is no stranger to melancholic observation. Using as caption and melancholy, he writes, time's unbearable complexity, as though our souls could never be the equal of our bodies. That's the proprioceptive moment again. As though our souls could never be the equal of our bodies. It's devouring, occurring at such a rate, only knowing, Copan says, white and preserving black, that the mystery unity is seen only in the sun, as against the truth unity, and will make us unsuccessful in the desire for death. Talk about melancholy.
Well, what does that say? I mean, it's a very, very complicated.
It's incredibly
lots of
complicated.
different moods in terms of its attitude.
It's
you can't just sort of
joyful
like
and
bring that up to that word devouring, which you used previously. Come on.
I found a passage by my own poetic method, which is serendipity. I knew I wanted to talk about outer darkness, inner Skodnick. This happens to be on the left-hand side. I had already begun thinking of myself as a young poet, like a Hawthorne or maybe an Olson of a New England heritage, sculpting in the shadow and looking at life and taking notes and trying to make sense of it, and then meeting these fancy, farty, old summer residents, although they were beautiful people, who came to the island, and you said, oh, you want to be a poet. You know, when I was a boy, John Masefield wrote Sea Fever for me. How can you go forward in that kind of world? My topic was Olson and
By calling Olson an
autobiography. What?
You go forward by calling Olson an imperialist.
It's called Olson and
excuse me.
I call him
no,
the
seriously
solipsist.
though, no, in all seriousness, he's using Yepes to get to a point, showing an other view of Olson to get to a point where then he goes back to his story, right? I mean, he might be eliding some things in Olson, but you just elided things in his talk. You skipped right over that structure that he's created for this.
I'm sorry.
Cheers. Thank you, James.
I'm not going to read the rest of my paper to this unruly crowd.
He wants to beg for it.